We now have our first panel for the evening, Bridging the Digital Divide in Retail and Luxury. How does the digital revolution impact the retail and luxury goods industry? Simona Botti, Associate Professor of Marketing at London Business School, will moderate the discussion between our four speakers. Please welcome Simona and the speakers of the panel.
Okay, good evening, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here. I think my job is to introduce generally what we're going to talk about, and the topic is this bridging of offline and online marketing and retailing tools and the consequences on consumer behavior, on brand management, and in general on business strategy. So hopefully we're going to touch upon some hot topics like personalization and consumer research. I'm not going to use the word big data here, but like consumer research more in general, consumer engagement and e-commerce. So a lot of things that Martin has already talked about actually, and this idea of immediacy and impatience of the consumers and how this reflects on business, on marketing, on branding. And we're very lucky here to have a diverse group of experts, of speakers with different backgrounds and coming from different industries. And I think we're going to have a very interesting and varied, hopefully interesting and varied perspectives on this general topic of the bridging of online and offline. And not only the opportunities that we have heard so far, but also the challenges. It's not easy. So I just ask each of the panelists to introduce briefly herself, and then we can start with some questions.
Hi, I'm Mariana Satanas. I'm the head of e-commerce for Mr. Porter, that's part of the Porter Group.
Hi, I'm Nicola Becerra. I'm the digital production manager for Label X Global Business Services.
Hi, I'm Leticia Hershey. And I'm from a small neutral country in the heart of Europe that is also the capital of fine watchmaking and the birthplace of the World Wide Web. Little known fact, but I think it's relevant. I'm a global luxury marketing and communications specialist. I specialize in hard luxury, so watches, jewelry, and wine. And I've worked with brands such as Baxter & Strauss, the world's oldest diamond company, Patek Philippe, and Digital Luxury Group, where I oversaw research such as the World Watch Report and World Luxury Index, which analyzes online brand desirability. And very much looking forward to our panel today.
And hi, I'm Claire, and I head up the digital marketing at Selfridges. So thanks for the plugs earlier. And I should actually answer that app question a bit later too. There is a good reason. So my background is I started my career in a startup, then went into magazines, and then Virgin Atlantic, a bit of consulting, and then Selfridges for the last 3.5 years.
Okay, the first question I had, it's about, as I said, about the current trends, as you see, and also the main challenges when it comes to offline and online and mainly digital in luxury and retailing. And I was thinking about starting from Claire and maybe hearing also from Mariana.
Great. Well, I'm happy to kick off. I think we've just heard about it, but it's really about the sheer growth of mobile. And I think there's a couple of areas. I think it's quite a challenge to get your business thinking digital if you're not a pure play. But if you are a traditional retailer, moving forward thinking not just digital, but thinking mobile first. And I think that's the step change that many retailers definitely need to start thinking about. We're certainly doing an initiative at the moment where we've completely banned anyone looking at the desktop experience for over the next 2 weeks. We're just focusing on our mobile experience. That's a really simple, low-fi solution, but obviously we do look at multiple devices when we're thinking about customer journeys, but actually we're just banning anyone looking at the desktop experience to try and get everybody into that mindset, because we're the digital arm of Selfridges, but even adjusting our mindset also takes that little bit of a switch change. And also thinking about marrying up the journeys. I think from mobile, yes, it's a hugely powerful device when we're thinking about researching, but actually you don't necessarily always see a conversion happening on that. So to think about return on investment is actually can be quite challenging when you're thinking about investing in mobile, because you don't always see a sales return, but it's about marrying up the journey. And that's why email marketing is actually quite an interesting digital marketing channel, because it's actually one of the only marketing channels that can adequately looking at matching up experiences and certainly connecting the dots. So that's definitely an opportunity, but also a challenge. Thinking about the user journey, definitely between devices, and having confidence in that. And the personal nature of mobile means that actually I don't necessarily want to be targeted in a way that feels like you're invading my personal space. So getting that balance right is really quite key from a consumer point of view as well. So I think there's some of the opportunities and challenges, certainly just around mobile, which I know maybe leads into something that you might have a view on.
Yeah, but I just want to pick up on your point about, what you're doing in-house at the moment and looking at mobile first. No matter how far advanced a company is, a retail company is, having that mindset of developing for mobile first is such a challenge. Trying to persuade your senior management and your execs, forget the big screen that you're seeing your site on. Actually, let's just come down to a really, really tiny screen. It's just a complete. You just deal with it in such a different way. So it's a good challenge. I quite like what your mindset there is. But yeah, I was going to lead on to wearable tech. I know it's been around for a buzzword for about a year or so, but now we're kind of seeing brands such as Gucci partnering with will.i.am, coming up with a smartwatch, and obviously the Apple iWatch as well, launching last week, but just on pre-order. I think what we're going to see is the challenge that retailers are going to have is people how they're going to use their iWatch and how they're going to use their fitness apps. So they're not necessarily going to want to look good, running down the street and wearing a nice iWatch, but you do have those customers. They love technology and they love gadgets, and actually they love spending loads of money on their luxury brands. So they are going to go out there and they are going to spend quite a bit of money on these wearable tech. So it's how do these brands get on top of that to develop a really nice product that's actually not just a gimmick.
And I think we've seen that with the launch of Apple Watch actually on Friday, because we were very lucky to partner with Apple around that launch, and for the first time they have a space within a department store, and that space is actually in our Wonder Room, and positions them very well against the luxury set of brands that sit in that room, such as Cartier, Rolex. And it is a really beautiful experience, but it's also a step change for Apple. So I think to Marianne's point of that connection between making technology fashionable is a really important one, because I think that's definitely where a lot of brands are trying to marry up, and but also making it luxury, having that bridge between accessibility and aspirational is we all most people in the room probably do have an iPhone. Sorry, Samsung users, but that is the reality. But I think there's some great stories that we'll start to hear beyond, the health benefits that maybe an Apple Watch might have. But I think there's some great fashion experiences that will definitely come out.
So do you think that this is going to open up to co-brands activities more, or to kind of try to snatch, for example, talents from the luxury industry and the tech industry, or the other way around, like we saw, for example, with Apple and Burberry? Because I think there is a lot of opportunity for co-branding, no? And which is lower risk.
I think Apple have made some really smart hires, YSL, Burberry, and it really gives you a feel for where their direction is. But also when you see classic fashion houses also making big step changes and hiring people from technology backgrounds. Right. So I think there is a real convergence from an industry point of view, yes.
Well, I was just going to kind of pick up on that Claire's last point, how luxury fashion, like traditional luxury fashion brands, they're now thinking about e-commerce and their whole experience. So yeah, they've got stores and that's it. They haven't actually got any e-commerce experiences at all. I think now they're actually thinking, oh no, we're going to be left behind. Like we're pioneers in what we do in the retail luxury sector, but now, you know, we kind of need to join the dots in their whole customer experience.
Which leads to the next question to Nicola and Letitia about kind of best cases that you can think of this integration between online and offline. If you can think about your own experiences, or you know, not necessarily only your own experiences, but things that you think are like great examples that that we can build on. And again, Martin talked a little bit about these examples.
Okay, so actually, when you say the term best case, I'll give you an example of a best case to date, because I think there's always going to be improvements on what we're doing. But my example is my mother. I'm from the States, and my mother still lives in the States, and she is a very loyal Sephora customer. She has a rewards card because she's a VIB, which means she's a very important beauty. And she is not the same generation as I am, so obviously she didn't grow up with computers and mobile phones, so it's not necessarily native to her to have these things in her life. But she has an iPhone, and Sephora have an app. And the app allows her to kind of store her past purchases in there. She can see what color foundation she's purchased previously, her favorite lipsticks. She can also accumulate all of her beauty points inside of the app, and it can tell her when there's in-store promotions for her local store. And if she receives an email from Sephora, she can actually save her specific discount code into the passbook on her iPhone. So if she were to go into a Sephora store, which she does quite a lot, she can actually walk down the aisles and know what product she's looking for, and she can even receive push notifications when she's walking around or driving around LA rather, and she's near a Sephora store to tell her that there's a particular promotion, possibly for a product that she's already purchased. So I think that's a fantastic example, because she's not necessarily someone that you would assume is that clued into an online and an offline married experience. And also it kind of shows how I would consider them to be quite a luxury brand in terms of the brands that they do offer in store. And I think it's really impressive that they've been able to achieve that level of customer loyalty, and they can actually be so segmented that they can give her an experience that's just for her, which is quite impressive in my eyes.
Goes back to the personalization, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a little bit scary to me, but like
It is,
we go maybe when we talk about challenges and like I study like how too much choice freedom kind of can be bad for you. So I'm like, oh, you know, a lot of things to study.
Did your mum know that, like, driving around LA and she's passing a shop, that she'll get a notification? Did it freak her out a bit, or did it?
Well, so it's interesting. I was having this conversation with a colleague earlier. She doesn't really understand how it works. So rather than being freaked out by it, which maybe my grandmother would be, but she asked me, she's like, how does the website know that I was on it? She's like, because they show me things when I'm on other websites. How do they know what I like? And I was like, it's magic, Mom. It's magic. So she's actually not that freaked out by it. I think she actually thinks she feels special because she's getting this kind of targeted advertising. Yeah. So, but most people would probably be frightened by it. But I think it just makes her feel really special and unique, and she really takes the very important beauty to heart. And she's like, I'm a valuable Sephora customer, and that's why I get this special treatment. So it's a case where it's gone in the right direction rather than the wrong.
Letitia,
Sure.
more ideas about best cases of integration?
So looking at it from a hard luxury perspective, and it's no secret that luxury watch and jewelry brands have been a little bit of the late bloomers of the digital world, but also very in terms of e-commerce as well. But I've been quite amazed, and I don't know if this is the best case of the impact of Instagram, especially in like the Middle East, for example. Where with some of the brands that I've worked with, we have directly sold watches from there, or where maybe this wouldn't have happened on an e-commerce website, but especially with influencers such as Watch and Niche, for example, whose probably the biggest watch influencer right now for luxury brands, has over, I mean, for watches, and has over 1 million followers. So I think that's been quite interesting. Maybe it sounds basic, but
No, there's a lot of, I think a lot of important developments for, again, things I'm interested in like consumer research in general. So, things like Instagram or the social media in general open up to doing qualitative research in a much faster and efficient way. And qualitative research in general gives much more insights into consumer experience than quantitative research, right? One thing is like asking them, and one thing is like trying to get from what they do what actually moves the consumer. So the consumer insights that you can get through qualitative research is much deeper, and today is easier to do that. So this type of social media are very important in doing this kind of research, which leads me to the next question. It's going very well. It's about the advantages and disadvantages of using digital in retail and luxury, with an eye, if possible, given your experience on consumer research, consumer engagement, and maybe the sales part, right, the e-commerce part. And I was thinking about maybe Claire and Letitia, you can touch upon this, unless you can, of course, jump in. Yeah.
Well, continuing on the research subject, I think one of the main advantages, and then maybe it's one that we think of less, again, in terms of hard luxury, is the analytics. So when I was working, for example, with the World Watch Report, seeing how different markets search for luxury watch and jewelry brands is extremely interesting. One example, in China, well, of course, brand searches are the most important, but in China, for example, consumers don't search for model. They will search, the second most important query is by style. So this gives you an insight that when you're targeting China, instead of, obviously most of the watch brands have complicated names in a lot of cases, and they can't, it's hard to remember. But if you know that in China they search by style, then you could be like, okay, you can target in that way, or you can describe it in a certain way. So I think this kind of access is, it's priceless. It's not something you would have necessarily known before.
Yeah. Claire?
Yeah, I think to build on the social media piece, I think the world of clienteling has moved on, and I think social media really is at the heart of that. So we've got a lot of examples within Selfridges, actually, of our personal shopping team using Instagram as a really good way to drive sales. So we have an Instagram account called The London Shopper. If you look for him now, he has 10,000 followers, and he uses that to promote a lot of luxury brands. Probably some of those luxury brands wouldn't like some of the posts that he has produced with some of the ways that they've shot his, the brands, but actually that's part of luxury brands not having control over the way that their product might be photographed or used in certain environments, and that is partly a challenge, I think, for any luxury brand. But certainly he's having some fantastic success, being able to certainly sell quite adequately off the back of that. We also had another example of a girl in our Manchester Exchange store, and she has a lot of footballers following her Instagram account for all the right reasons, because they're all after this one particular trainer, Balenciaga trainer, and you can't keep it in stock very, very long at all. And as soon as she has it in stock, she takes a picture of it and posts it to Instagram, and then WhatsApps her best 5 customers, and instantly sold out within a couple of hours. So actually, it's no longer an email or a phone call. Actually, a lot of people are connecting their experiences digitally through social media, WhatsApp, definitely really key for that. I think the other advantages are around managing expectations and creating extraordinary experiences. So, for example, Cartier, when we started working with them and bringing those brands, some of their products onto selfridges.com, we actually had a lot of conversations about the end mile that we heard about earlier. And actually for them, it was really important they still controlled some of the experience. So what we have done off the back of working with them, if you shop, click and collect a Cartier on Selfridges.com, you actually go and pick up that product within the Wonder Room and their boutique. So they handle the one-to-one experience when that customer comes in and buys a £10,000 piece of jewellery. And there was a lot of sceptics, I think Cartier side and even Selfridges side, that actually, will someone buy a £10,000 watch online? And they absolutely will. And quite a lot at certain times of the year. And yes, certainly maybe when they're trying to impress somebody in particular. But yeah, I think actually there's big change. And I think that also goes for mobile. People thought that actually somebody wouldn't spend that kind of money on mobile. And we're really starting to see the change. And I think certainly as devices become bigger, people become a lot more confident in that journey as well. And I don't think there are disadvantages. I actually think there's considerations, that's what I would say. And I think the considerations with luxury are around accessibility and aspirational. So, for example, we don't have reviews on Selfridges.com, and it's not because we don't care about our customers' opinion. And in certain categories that we stock and sell, like beauty and technology, reviews are incredibly important. But actually, a review on a £5,000 dress, I'm not sure how valuable that actually is, because it's that sense of making it aspirational and accessible. And somebody that buys a £5,000 dress is probably pretty unlikely to leave a review on it. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but I'm just saying is around that positioning around making something really accessible. And we really believe that as a brand, because our mantra is open to everybody, and that's why we have high, low, fast, slow when you come into Selfridges and experience that, or on the website as well. But I think it's definitely that blend, and not and it can be a challenge for the top tier in luxury, I think, as well.
Yes, this one thing that fascinates me of this of these two worlds is this contrast between the exclusivity of luxury and the accessibility of digital. And maybe a few years ago, there were people were much more skeptical in the luxury world that would actually work, and nowadays a little bit less so. But what do you guys think? I mean, how can you really still maintain something luxurious, also so inaccessible and aspirational, and at the same time so easy to click and collect if you have the £5,000 probably, but so easy to get to? How do you think you can blend this?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult to try and fight the fact that digital is so accessible. And I think one thing that's a pillar of luxury is clienteling and that relationship with your customer. So rather than fighting it, you can kind of use that data and you can use that information to have an even closer relationship with the customer. And I use my mother as a prime example, and Selfridges, and the Selfridges customers as well. So rather than fighting WhatsApp and Instagram, and fighting the fact that anyone can download an app, why not use it to your advantage and make a customer feel special? The old days of personal shoppers in store and them giving you a call when something was in, why not send them a push notification when they're walking by, if you have an iBeacon in the store, to tell them, actually, if the black Pigalle in a size 38 is your go-to shoe, we've just got some more in. You can use that, and you can kind of build on what people trust about luxury, and it's what people love about luxury. It's that attention to detail. It's the romancing of the customer, and I think you should just kind of use it to your advantage rather than trying to kind of put blinders on and pretend like it's not there.
Yeah, and to even take it a step back, it's actually your site, your apps, everything has to be luxurious. You've got to have the highest quality images. You've got to have, the best service. Your shipping options. You're creating your convenience for your customers. Your product information. That lady who's going to buy that £500 dress on Selfridges and Net-a-Porter, they're spending £500 and they're going to spend it just like that. But they want to feel reassured that what they're getting, is going to fit them and is going to make them feel amazing. So the product information and the product images, very, very important. And customers, they want to go onto a site or onto an app and have a seamless experience, and that's what is, and that's why quite a few older traditional luxury brands, not necessarily are scared of entering the digital space, but they're very wary of it. But it's exciting times for them, you know. It's a great thing to do, and they definitely have to embrace WhatsApp and Instagram, and you know, we even, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but Snapchat. It's like, what, really? But you know, it's where our customers are at, be it inspirational or, you know, aspirational, and that's where we've got to be.
Okay. Any more thoughts on this? Covered that. So I teach brand management, so I'm a brand enthusiast in general. And a lot of the students always tell me, like, you know, there is not enough digital in my class. So, you know, now I'm getting all these ideas. I'm going to put it in my class. And, you know, my perspective is always that, like, but you still need the basics. You still need the brand strategy. You still need to know what your identity is and what target segment is, and, you know, how to get this information from consumers. But it's a question I want to ask you, and you know, maybe we can start this side of the table. How does digital change brand strategy or brand management? Are there fundamental changes, strategic changes, more in terms of delivery? But how do you see, you know, digital helping you or hindering you in building brands?
I don't think it changes it. I think it helps it. It helps add that value to your brand. You know, we're all talking about social here, but digital, you can reach so many more customers than you could 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 2 years ago even, when you were launching a brand. And so for me, I think it definitely helps reach people where you wouldn't have thought possible. But how you manage that, especially through social media, because if someone has a really bad experience with your brand, first thing they're going to do, they're not going to complain to you, they're going to go straight on social, and they're going to make sure that the whole world knows about it. Right. So it's how, especially as a luxury retailer, you handle that. Do you want to go online and, you know, grovel and apologise to this customer, or actually you going to call them up privately and sort it out of court, so to speak? But I think it definitely helps it in that way. So what do you?
Yeah, I think building on what Mariana was saying, I think absolutely you can, in terms of brand creation, you can use it to your advantage because of all the information that you have at your fingertips to be able to learn about your customers, and you know, it's kind of supply and demand. You know, if you're seeing a lot of kind of inquiries from a country that you don't ship to, that can help you open up that channel, and that's just kind of incremental sales if it works out. But I think in terms of kind of brand management, I think the brands that I work with at the moment, you know, kind of brand protection is really difficult to do. You can manage the brand and you can manage how your brand is portrayed to your customers when you're the one providing those actions. It's your site, it's your app, it's your email, it's your brand, your tone of voice. But with, you know, counterfeit websites and marketplaces have posed a big challenge for our brands, because once you put your brand into the hands of the consumers, you know, if I buy a Jimmy Choo bag and then I then put it on eBay or on Vestiaire Collective, I photograph it, I put the description, I name the price. So all of a sudden, that brand power is in the hands of the consumer, and there's very little you can do. Obviously, you can have partnerships with certain marketplaces, and particularly with your wholesalers. You know, you might be able to leverage on, you know, kind of guidelines and rules. But because it is actually so accessible, once it leaves your doors, so to speak, there's very little you can do about it. It makes it very difficult.
So somehow you lose control over what you're doing with your brand, but in a sense, I mean, it makes you more responsible for what you're doing. Like, I mean, if you do good things, hopefully there are not going to be crazy people saying like bad things about your brand out there. And the counterfeit is a different problem, a different issue, and there's always been there the possibility to counterfeit and how you react to that. There's always they say, like, you know, if they stop counterfeiting you, it means there's a bad thing.
Yeah,
you're not aspirational any longer.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. I think imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Exactly.
However, I think, you know, back when it was just brick and mortar stores, the counterfeit products were just being sold in a dark alleyway somewhere, whereas now, you know, as a brand, you have to fight for that first listing page in Google to make sure that counterfeit sites aren't stealing that prime real estate from you. You have to bid on yourself to make sure that you maintain that. So it's kind of it's almost a separate attack that wouldn't have been considered 20 years ago, and now is quite important.
Yeah. Do you have any more think about like brand management, creation, and digital, or?
I think one of the challenges in terms of management for hard luxury brands is you're looking at an industry that's producing one collection a year versus fashion where you're at resort, fall, summer. So it's creating content, constantly creating and beautiful content, luxurious content, visual content works extremely well. So I think that's one of the challenges. And I think one of the reasons that we're seeing more sort of one-of-kind pieces and launches throughout the year now that like watch brands are doing our collaborations like Hublot with FIFA, for example, is part of that content creation and engaging and bringing the customer into the atmosphere, the environment of the brand.
Which go back probably to the co-branding thing, right?
Yeah.
If you're like under so much pressure to create so much content, probably it can be also an opportunity to reach out and establish collaborations, and they can help, right? For co-branding. Claire,
Yeah, I think it's, we've had to in a digital age get used to losing that bit of control. And I think you can have, if you look at your staff, for instance, we've got a very active staff base on social media. I've just rolled out a new social media policy with our HR team, guidelines, training, etc. But actually, they're embracing it. They're your biggest brand ambassadors. So how do you embrace that as a culture and relinquish control? And it's a big step for many organisations to take, and especially in luxury. But it is that bridge of being, of course, your standards, your brand, absolutely key because it makes you who you are.
Excellent.
But you equally, you need to give and take, and it's important to get that balance right, especially in this age, and millennials and how they're actually using and experiencing your brand is firstly through digital now. So it's important. If you lead the conversation, you participate in the conversation, you'll be much better placed other than that, ignoring it.
So what do you think is a greater opportunity in the consumer research side, in the consumer engagement side, or in the actually sales, in the e-commerce?
I would say all. And it depends on where you are in your journey. Because I think research, I remember sharing some research with our Christmas steering group last year, and we're planning Christmas at the moment. But I remember we were creating a lot of noise around bespoke and personalisation, the importance of having bespoke product. And I was showing them some Hitwise data, which is an Experian product, which shows you gift-related search terms. And when I showed our managing director saying everyone's looking for personalised gifting, she's like, have you told the graphics team? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, right, we're changing everything from bespoke to personalisation. And personalisation is such a key product story for us at Christmas. Nutella and personalised, talking about a complete far end of not a luxury product, but actually luxury in a different way. Because you can go and buy Nutella from Sainsbury's, but are you going to pay £4 for a personalised Nutella in Selfridges? Create demand that, frankly, we couldn't cope with and had it wrapped around in terms of queues. Yeah. Absolutely, because it takes a product that's quite standard and then makes it personalised and unique. And I think that's where even a luxury brand needs to be really careful of, because actually you've got mainstream brands can create something bespoke and personalised. So I think, you can use it for trending and customer research. Talking about watches, we've created a bespoke taxonomy because now we know that our customers need to search by metal. And we hadn't done that when we first launched our watches categorisation. Yeah. So you learn a lot. And then absolutely, definitely in the sales space, so many brands have to invest there because, it might start as a small percentage, but it will soon grow. And you're missing a sales opportunity, frankly, by not being in that space.
Yeah. And Nutella is totally luxury and aspirational. I'm with you. With or without the personalization. Okay, so we're perfect on time here. Thanks maybe to your presence in the panel. We would like to devote the last 10 minutes to questions that you may have from the audience. And if not, we have more. Yes, please. That in the middle? Oh, no.
Shout.
Yes, please. Sure.
The Drum released a report today around 2/3 of retailers aren't actually having a mobile strategy. But I think that's more down to the interpretation of what people see as mobile for their businesses. The question of the panel is, what do you interpret as mobile? We've mentioned a lot of things today, potentially iBeacons, mobile media, mobile marketing. what does it mean to the panel? What does mobile mean to you as a group and individuals?
Okay.
Where do we start? Yeah. Mobile to me personally means responsive. So, yeah, that whatever you see on your mobile is adapted, and you're not there sort of, struggling to look at the tiny detail.
So this is immediacy of
Responsive,
getting to
yeah. To make sure
responsiveness?
that whatever you're doing is responsive on mobile.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my point as well. So I think there was a previous discussion earlier about why don't some of the brands have apps like Belstaff, and Belstaff is one of the brands that we work with, and I think it's about prioritizing within a business. And right now, our two main priorities are migrating our sites onto a responsive code base, which I think is incredibly important because at the moment on some of our mobile sites, we don't have the capacity to serve the same content as we do on the desktop site. So I would see that as more of a priority than launching an app, to make sure that actually on every touch base that our customer has, that they get the exact same experience and the same content and the same shopping capabilities. So that's our kind of top priority for this year.
That's funny because I kind of said the opposite. Well, yeah, so I set our kind of mobile strategy this year. So we've got our apps, and we've got our mobile site, and you've got desktop, and you've got tablet, and we just took it as a given. Desktop and tablet, you can have the same experience, the same content, but within our apps and our mobile site, it's actually, for me, the most important thing was that you have the same experience across all mobile devices and desktop, but you don't necessarily have to have the same content. And what I challenged our UX team, our mobile team, and our designers was to, because they always want to innovate and whatnot, and I had to take, just pull them, rein them in a little bit, and I was like, I want to do all this, but I think it's very important that we look at each device, each platform, and get the best out of every single one of those. So yeah, sometimes it will work where you can have the same content. I think you need to actually look at the device and get the best customer experience and the most seamless experience, and what's most important, what's going to make that, that sale at the end of the day, what's going to get that brand engagement from your mobile devices and your mobile strategy.
I echo that. I think if you were first stage, it would be probably about creating very much a integrated and responsive experience. But then I think you move on and you begin to realise how customers are using those devices. The reason we don't have an app is because, to be honest, we haven't landed on the right consumer idea, and it will just gather dust in the App Store, like many other retailers and brands maybe sitting here or in existence. And I think there are reasons that apps are successful. Utility is definitely one. If I think about my own experience, I use my torch in the morning so I don't disturb my husband when I get up at a crazy time, and I use it for my bus timetable, especially at the moment because I need to get a bus because I'm getting larger and I can't walk as fast. So I think it's not, there is a reason. So they're actually things that I use. And the other things that I've downloaded, frankly, are gathering dust. So actually a mobile web experience has been our primary focus for us at Selfridges, and that's what we've focused on optimizing. But now we're getting into that customer journey around what are the right edits to show on mobile, what is the right content, because actually you need to get people to product quicker, or you need to actually cut down that journey. Before we relaunched our mobile experience, we had 10 steps in our checkout. That's embarrassing. We've now got 3. But it is really, really important that you think about the right device, and we've got a different experience when it comes to desktop and tablet. So I think it evolves, and you have to evolve that, but be quick, because Google are putting a nice alert very shortly saying this is slow, do not use it on your mobile. And so if you're not there, you need to start thinking about it much, much quicker than maybe you've anticipated.
Next question. There were some hands in the same area that I saw, unless I'm hallucinating. I saw some hands there.
You've talked about the brand experience across platforms from desktop to mobile, but what about tracking? How do you understand how your users are behaving differently between desktop, mobile, tablet?
There's analytics out there that you track on how, on which device a customer is on, and then where do they actually make their final purchase. So slightly not to do with tracking, but we've got this thing called persistent cart, where wherever you add a product, be it on app, be it on the desktop, but you don't purchase it, and then you go onto a different platform. So if you add it on desktop, then you're on your mobile at home in your mobile app, then you can then purchase that product. It's the same with analytics. You can put in the tracking where you know how each customer is behaving on each device, and it's key as well because you learn about your consumers' behaviours, and kind of like what we've learned is a lot of people around about 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night are actually browsing on their laptops and on their tablets and their iPhones or Androids, and they're browsing through our sites. But then they're coming back the next day and then they're purchasing. So it's key to have your analytics, because if you don't have that, then you're second guessing your customer experience and how they behave.
Anything to add?
It's using technology to be able to track that data, but you get that information, and I think what can be not challenging, but what can be interesting about that is something that Claire touched on earlier. It's about like attribution of that. So just because you're getting a large volume of traffic from one place doesn't mean that they might be converting you, but it's looking at how all of those different touch points are connected. So sometimes it's just receiving the data, looking at it, but it's also analyzing the data to make sure that you're putting the stories together.
Definitely attribution, and to mirror really what's been said. Really, really important.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's like, a couple of questions more maybe? Only one? This is the last one? This is the last one, it better be good.
I make it good then. So my name is Michael, I'm the founder of a company called POC. And we run a software platform for retailers to launch and maintain apps. So we launched, for example, the House of Fraser app on our platform fairly recently. And I wanted to question that point of conversion rates. Because, for example, if you look at House of Fraser, their highest converting channel is actually their Android app, and that is across desktop, tablet, and smartphone. As well as Net-a-Porter. I think they make 40% of your mobile revenue from their app. So these actually apps are very well converting. My question is, though, around software and generally around technology systems. How much do you feel held back by legacy technologies, for example, e-commerce platforms, things like that?
Okay, who gets this one?
So can you be more kind of specific on that?
So you have technology systems, right? For example, your POS system, or your e-commerce system, or your order management system. How much is that an issue to have something that is old and doesn't necessarily integrate? Or is that an issue, maybe? That's the question.
I wouldn't necessarily call it an issue. I think it's seeing how businesses are going to have to change over time. And another priority for the brands, our portfolio of brands, is being omni-channel, which is kind of a buzzword at the moment. But I wouldn't call it an issue. It's having to adapt old ways of working to be able to support new consumer behavior, really. And yes, it will take a lot of work to have a single view of the customer and to have single kind of stock pool, and it's not something you can do overnight, particularly when all of our businesses are brick and mortar first. But it's just something that is happening, and we need to take part in it, really. So yes, they are laborious. I won't lie and say that some of our systems aren't old, but we're taking steps in the right direction to merge all of the different retail channels.
Yeah, I think it depends how old you mean by legacy. If it's like a 20-year-old system, you haven't re-platformed, or you're just adding more code on top of more code and more code, there's going to be a point where you're going to be like, the foundations are just going to break. So it depends how agile you know, as a software company you are, and you're always going to have legacy. You know, you can have legacy code that's only a year old, but it's not really legacy. So it just depends. But it could become a problem if you don't actually keep on top of it.
Do you have time for one more very quick question, maybe for this other side of the table? We have 1 minute. Is it a half end or? Yes.
I was just wondering if you sometimes find it difficult to, as a luxury brand, show how good your product is through virtual media as opposed to. So I'm thinking it's maybe cheaper to create beautiful content on the website as opposed to create shop. How to manage to do it.
30 seconds.
Sorry, I didn't catch your last.
So the question is really, maybe brands are less luxurious than others.
Yeah.
Find that gap easier to bridge, or see more luxurious and the product to be better in the consumer because it's cheaper to create that on your website than to create a great shop fit where you actually have access to the product. So it's the virtual way of making some companies less luxurious, bridging the gap.
It's definitely a challenge, I think, especially in the hard luxury industry, to communicate about the product. But something that works especially well is video. You know, filming of the product being crafted, the craftsmen. So I think that really, I mean, we've had success with that. And also beautiful, beautiful photographs. But again, I mean, that's expensive. But yes, it does. It's a challenge, but it's... And I was actually reading something yesterday which was interesting, which touching on your point, which was saying that on Instagram, for example, it's much harder to show, you know, the softness of a cashmere versus prints and different other types of materials. So, yeah, definitely.
Do you have a last
I would
point?
just add to that, I don't try and replicate the physical into the digital, enhance it via digital, because I think you can never, I mean, you can't replicate the physical. I would love to replicate how amazing London Oxford Street is for Selfridges. I really, really would. But we're about enhancing that experience digitally, and I think that's the key mindset. So I think, you know, creating amazing digital experiences is what a brand should focus on, and there's many different mediums, from video to social to beautiful imagery to fantastic written content that enables you to do that real time, etc. So you offer some of the things that you can't in a physical space and connect them and make it seamless.
Yeah, which goes back to the bridging that we started with. So thank you for the question. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. Thank you for our panelists. And,